You are Locked On Vikings POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Whoa, Vikings storm back from 13 down and beat Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings POSTCAST. I'm Sam Ekstrom, filling in for Luke Inman, who is at the game today. He got to experience a 23-22 Minnesota Vikings win. I'm joined by Luke Braun, host of Locked On Vikings, Ron Johnson, host of the Ron Johnson Show, all part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, which is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your destination when the Vikings games are done. Instant reaction for the next half hour and change. The defense bent a lot, didn't totally break. Offense came alive in the fourth quarter. It felt like 2022. Sam Darnold, another interception-free game, and some fourth quarter heroics. We're going to get into all of that on today's postcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The sequence that we'll be talking about, Ron, is the Jonathan Gannon decision, first of all. Fourth down from the 4, elects to kick the chip shot field goal and go up 6. And it's the up 6 fallacy, I think, when you voluntarily go up 6 and force the other team to beat you, which the Vikings did. They drive 70
Greg
yards.
Olsen talked about.
Greg Olsen was all
on the broadcast, laid the whole thing out, and was like exactly that scenario happened.
I mean, if the Cardinals go for it, they either clinch the game with a touchdown, and they were moving the ball, or they pinned the Vikings at the 4. I mean, really, they gave the Vikings so much hope. If you're in that crowd, the 65,000 people there, 64,000 of them were praying that they just kick the field goal, and that's exactly what they did. Vikings drive the field, and Ron, they got the stop. What was your biggest takeaway from that final game-winning sequence with the defense getting the first stand, then the offense driving down, and the defense getting a second stand to win it?
Well, I say first, the Vikings defense, as much as they bend but don't break, they did a great job. If you look at the Cardinals coming into this game, their red zone offense and their goal-to-go offense was number 1 in the NFL, 16 for 16. Whenever they were goal-to-go, they had scored a touchdown 16 times. So for the Minnesota Vikings to do what they did today in order to force a couple field goals, it was, I mean, if you look at overall, I think it was 1 total field goal is what the Cardinals had done once they went goal to goal. And so for the Vikings defense to kind of step up and did what they did, it was pretty dynamic. I will say that you guys has mentioned the Jonathan Gannon decisions. It's one of those things, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because if he goes for it, he doesn't get it. And then the Vikings drive down and have a chance to either tie the game or win it. Like you can come back and people be like, oh, why did you just kick the field goal? Then you would have forced the Vikings couldn't have sent you to overtime with a field goal. Like there's a lot of scenarios here that with the analytics and that, but at the end of the day, the Cardinals offense, and this is the one thing that we talked about on the pregame show, and I was pretty spot on. I'm pissed off too about that because we had 4 questions we either had to go with or go against, and it was, will the Cardinals rush for more than 100 yards? I said, yeah. Most people on our show said no. Lieber, Don Mitchell, Rosie, everybody said nope. I said, yeah. They said, would Sam Darnold not throw an interception? I said he will not. Bill Lieber actually said he will. So I got him there on that one. The only
3
one
straight games now, no picks.
I know the one that threw me off was the Justin Jefferson 90+ yards, and that was a trick one because if you look at what he's done the past couple of games and how teams have either tried to take him out of it, I was close, 99 yards. I just needed him to not have one more catch, and I would have had that one too. And then of course, will the Vikings win? And we all said, yeah, I think they get their 10th win today. That happened, but this Cardinals defense on 3rd and 1 to 6 was 5th in the NFL. On 3rd and 7 to 10, they were 32nd. They had converted 14.3%. And so today, even with that, like they were actually moving the ball on 3rd and 12, which was pretty like ironic when you think about how bad they had been leading up to this game.
Yeah, I mean, Braun, I'll let you talk about the end game sequence there as well. But I think another takeaway for me is like big picture, the Vikings get a win. They needed a late rally to do it, and they took on I think a very legitimate opponent in Arizona, which
Oh, yeah.
might explain
It's a good team.
why there was so much difficulty, but also there was a lot of difficulty early in this game. But we'll circle back to the early struggles. Let's focus on the good stuff. What'd you like most about the end sequence that got the Vikings the win?
Yeah, it's funny with the thing that you mentioned and Greg Olson mentioned with if they had gone for it on that fourth and not gotten it, only been up 3. And if you kind of play that all out, well, the Vikings had a 4th and 7 in field goal range on their final drive. They go for it, get it because they had to Justin Jefferson, and then end up scoring the touchdown that they need to Aaron Jones, who gets to be a hero after his early fumble and that his struggles. Right, he gets
early fumbles.
Yeah, 2 early fumbles. And the wheel route, which is a tough catch, but he doesn't make that. So he's getting all kinds of heat and he gets to kind of go in with the final touchdown. But it doesn't that kind of feel like just a day of like a whole bunch of redemption for people after that defense just could not get off the field until they did. And they couldn't get a stop until the end when they did. And I think Grenard took over the game a little bit at the end there. And that's why Kevin O'Connell, I was sitting there, I was watching with my dad here on Thanksgiving weekend, and we were both going, you got to take a timeout here and get him back in the game. He has to be in the game for this. Even though like that timeout is so much more valuable to potentially give you time if something happened like that. You got to take it right now and get him back in the game. And they pressured Kyler Murray very little all day until the end. And when you have a game like that, I mean, the Cardinals almost ran 80 plays on this game. This was exhausting for the defense. They were gassed at the end. But whose athleticism fell apart? It was that O-line, not the defense. And so I think that there was an advantage the Vikings had athletically there that doesn't always come up, but being able to kind of play your best ball on plays 78, 79, 80 is really impressive. Even though the reason you were on the field so long is kind of also your fault. You got to deal with some stuff. That they kind of get to walk off feeling heroes until they go, on Monday, go to your film session.
I mean, how about fourth quarter, Sammy?
Oh, it's Victory Monday. They're off Monday. Yeah. This is Victory Monday.
It's
too late in the season
for
that. they'll get the iPad link to watch the film.
An ailing Kirk Cousins coming in next week. We'll touch on that before the end of the show. But how about Sam Darnold? Last week he goes 11 of 13 in fourth quarter and overtime, was fantastic. And today, after 2.5 quarters of pure misery, he engineers late third quarter touchdown drive, 9-play field goal drive, 8-play game-winning touchdown drive, darts under pressure. He was terrible against the blitz early. He got really good against the blitz late, unfazed. Fourth down completion, touchdown to Jones, obviously pretty high percentage throw. But how about Sam Darnold, Luke Braun?
Yeah, this was, I think, like the Jags game a little bit for the first like 3 quarters, 2.5 quarters, until that first touchdown drive that kind of put them right back into range. That when the Vikings were down 19-6 and you needed to go get that touchdown to stop this from just being a really sleepy, sad loss, then they figured it out. But I think they had problems early with that. I mean, the Cardinals sent 7-6 guys constantly, and the Vikings didn't seem very ready for that. I don't know if the Cardinals have much of a reputation for being quite that aggressive at that volume for a blitz, but they weren't ready for it. They did not have the hot routes ready. Sometimes they didn't even have one. Darnold was sitting there waiting for probably, hard to see what's downfield. Maybe Ron, you could see, but post routes or whatever it was, waiting for stuff to develop downfield, taking sacks, scrambling. I mean, they just were not ready for, we have 6 blockers who sent 7 guys. It wasn't like an exotic pressure. It was just a numbers game. And I think once they kind of figured out how to get the ball out quickly, like the game icing touchdown, the ultimately go ahead touchdown was, I believe, a blitz, swing it out to the running back and he walks in. Figured that out in the second quarter instead of, the end of the third. And I feel like you're putting up 32 points in this one and you're winning comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, as they point out in the chat, we mentioned it, 3 games, no picks for Sam Darnold. I mean, Ron, you've touched on Darnold throughout the week as well. He had a lull mid-season that he seems to be coming out of, and now we've seen the clutch gene emerge from him, which I never thought we'd say, but without Sam Darnold, they don't come back in this football game down 13 from nowhere. They were in quicksand until Darnold made some connections downfield, got this offense going.
Yeah, and I will say he looked a little bit like Daniel Jones scrambling today. Like I think Daniel Jones, just for his
He
five
did.
minutes in Minnesota,
He
said,
learned
"Hey,
a little,
hey,
huh?
yeah." He's like, "Hey, just run a little bit more. You'll be okay. Like trust me, it works." Sam Darnold also got away with. He almost had an interception. I don't know what the heck he was thinking when he threw the ball away, but he threw it away back inside, and then he was
Right.
pointing. So he's pointing to somebody. Somebody messed up there because he was throwing like he threw it in as if he thought maybe the receiver was going to keep going in, and he just stopped because you see him pointing like, "What are you doing? You're supposed to go this way." But to Luke's point, yeah, there were a couple deep ball routes that I don't understand why Sam was waiting for him to develop. The offensive line was not giving them time. They were playing the numbers game with, if I see you motion and I can come off the blitz without you realizing I'm coming, we're going to come, meaning like I'm only 2 yards away or I'm 3 yards away. And you constantly saw a little bit more motioning towards the end of the game with Justin Jefferson because they were like, look, we got to motion, we got to move them, we got to help you out and figure out who's covering who. But the other side of this too, and I said this in a pregame show, you can't be predictable. They were extremely predictable early on with what they were trying to get with Justin Jefferson, with daggers and with deep overs. And all the Cardinals were doing was they were blitzing, rushing, having blitz. They were rushing like 5 or 6, and then they would drop everybody else and they would drop 2 to Justin Jefferson's side. You saw that constantly where they were dropping people underneath, where it's almost like he needed to run the reverse curl, which is kind of where you run like you're going to run an out route and you curl it up. And eventually at the end, if you notice, he started doing that. That was that one almost was a pick. He stepped up and caught it. You got to run those routes because when they're thinking, okay, he's running a corner, you'll have that outside defender stay out there waiting for the corner route, and it never comes. And I think that's where Kevin O'Connell started figuring out, like, look, we can't just run corners. We can't just run deep overs. We got to hook up a little bit more, and we got to run some short stuff. And so hopefully going into this next game, it's time to do it. But the one thing, Sam, you talked about this, Sam Darnold, and I saw somebody say Sam Darnold's in his MVP era. Kevin O'Connell went back to the state fair with Sam Darnold. He put the leash back on him. You could tell by the way he was looking at his wristband. And for those who understand, the wristband is easier for a quarterback and it has more notes on it than the headset. And so you could see him flip it up and look and then close it and then go on with a play call. And then he would do the give it to me again, give it to me again. You see him look again and then you see him go. So that's more of Kevin O'Connell saying, hey, if you don't see it, do this. If you don't think this, do this. And he was kind of walking them back through it. I think he has to do this the rest of the season. I don't think you can ever take Sam Darnold off the leash, which is not a bad thing. He's still a good quarterback.
When we return, we'll get more into this defensive performance and how some mounting injuries could affect them going forward on a victorious Vikings postcast. We are brought to you by Ice Shaker. And if you're like me, the holiday shopping, it's far from complete. If that's the case, I've got the perfect gift for the passionate sports fan in your life. Perhaps you've heard of Ice Shaker. It's now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, and MLB. It's the ideal gift. Good stocking stuffer or put it under the tree. Created by, used by the Gronkowski brothers, Ice Shakers has sold over 1 million bottles. They've changed the game with workout bottles. This is the gift that you've been looking for. Go to iceshaker.com. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to save 25% on your order. Kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like plastic bottles do. Patented twist-in agitator that breaks up powders. It's third-party tested. Will hold ice for 30-plus hours. Order your team-branded bottles today at iceshaker.com. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. Ice Shakers. Show your support for your team with the best branded workout bottles on the market. Ice Shakers. We are also brought to you by BetterHelp. How do you stay cozy during the winter months? For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate, watching a movie with family. It's the best way to spend the month of December in this holiday season. Therapy is also a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. The holiday season can be fun. It can be thrilling. It can be hectic. It can be stressful. And if that's the case, find some comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, back on the Vikings postcast. We'll have a lot more reaction to this game on the Minnesota Football Party tomorrow. Ron Johnson on Tuesday. We'll talk about it throughout the week here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. A 23-22 Vikings win. 5 straight wins for a second time this year. They stay within shouting distance of the Detroit Lions in the NFC North. Luke Braun, a little more on this defense. It's hard to
interesting game for them.
Really interesting day. 77 plays they faced, like you said. Yards per play actually worse for Arizona than it was for Minnesota, 5.3 to 5.4.
Really, by the end of the day, that's crazy.
Extended drives, lived in Vikings territory. Of those 77, I bet most of them were in Vikings territory. Defended the run pretty well, unless it was Kyler who got loose on him. What do you make of it? Because it felt like they were doing a lot of good things. They weren't giving up explosives, but at the end of the day, you were kind of white knuckling it there down the stretch, wondering if they had anything left in the tank.
Yeah, the bend don't break thing, I think, was a little bit of the Cardinals kind of falling apart too when they got to the red zone. You know, you had like a penalty catastrophe thing, or taking, a bad negative play, and then suddenly it's 2nd and 15. And sometimes that is how the Flores thing works, where, hey, if you get 2 explosives and 2 sacks on a drive in some random order, that stalls the drive more often than not, and that's the logic. But what I thought was interesting, something they said on the broadcast, that Brian Flores called more man coverage than he's ever called in a game this year against these Cardinals receivers, which is it. Like, Marvin Harrison's having a good year. Trey McBride is real. So that was, I think, a sort of a motion of disrespect to the Cardinals offense, right? Saying, we can man you up. We got our guys. Even after Stephon Gilmore goes out and Fabian Moreau is in, we man up all day and he gets victimized on a whole drive. But the other thing I thought was interesting is comparatively few of those cover 0 looks until the end of the game, where they finally brought him back on that last drive. And then guess what happened? The Cardinals went backwards. So I kind of think that Flores went away from some of the things that had been working for the last 4 games. And that caused a lot of struggles. And it could have been a lot worse if the Cardinals kind of pulled it together and didn't shoot themselves in the foot as much as they could have. But it's hard to argue with the hero moment at the end of the game, right? To go be in man coverage, by the way, pick off the final the final 4th down, win the turnover battle, by the way, even though you could have batted that one down for the same effect, and get out of there with a win. So it worked out, but I don't know if that was a better plan than what we've been doing up till then.
Yeah, Ron, you thought they played well. You mentioned. I'm wondering how you feel though about the cornerback change. We haven't seen them have to use their depth at cornerback at all. Stephon Gilmore goes out with the hammy. You got to worry about that now going forward. Fabian Moreau in coverage. He was certainly sticky, a little too sticky. Picked up a big PI call in the red zone. Gave up a touchdown to Marvin Harrison Jr., which again, Kyler Murray, I thought, was insane in this game, Ron. And you can take it into account, when you evaluate this defense, he just made some insane throws that were well covered, and he put them right where he needed to put them. But Fabian Moreau got picked on. That was clearly an intention of Drew Petzing and the offense once they got Moreau in the game. Does that worry you going forward, Ron?
No, it doesn't worry me. I think Fabian Moreau, he was asked to do big duties in a short amount of time that wasn't planned. And so it is what it is. We'll see what this hamstring looks like. He'll learn from it. The one thing I noticed is he was talking way too much to Mark. Like, don't poke the bear. Like, you make one play, just make one play and go back to the huddle. He poked the bear a little bit. You saw Marvin Harrison call for the ball a couple of times when he knew he was manned up. And I knew it. You can't outlast that man. And so, but again, he did a great job. When it counted, he broke up some plays. I think that PI where he kind of wrapped the arm around, I think that was BS. They showed on the Jumbotron like 4 or 5 times, and even the close-up, it wasn't a tug. You are allowed to have your hand on him. It was just a ref, I don't know, bailout call, who knows what. But before I get out of here, the one thing I do want to say is the Minnesota Vikings have won 10 games. And so I hope that people understand, like, it's going to be some growing pains in this. The goal is to stay this way until the Lions game. If you can get to the Lions game, I think they have a chance to, be NFC North champions. I feel like, like the Packers, Vikings, Packers, Vikings, and Lions, nobody can falter. And so that's why this is going to be such a fun, last 4 to 5 games.
Hey, Vikings won ugly, Lions won ugly. Still counts. Thanks a lot, Ron. At 3 Ron Johnson, host of the Ron Johnson Show. He'll head to his other post-game duties. We continue on with Luke Braun. The comment section is rolling right now. People are high on the win. They're with their families. Thanksgiving weekend. People are fired. And why wouldn't you be?
Everybody's high-fiving their parents, which I just did. So
13-point comeback win, basically all in was it all in the fourth quarter, or did they score right before? I think they scored right before the fourth quarter.
They scored right before the fourth to go down 13-19 or 19-13, and then
the Cardinals had a marathon drive. I mean, the Cardinals
big 17-play field goal drive felt like a backbreaker, didn't it? But being able to get that stop afterwards, and you just think they're just too gassed. So coming up with that is what keeps coming back to me in my head.
Well, the Cardinals had only had 1 3-and-out all day. It was the missed field goal after the takeaway, after the Jones fumble. They went 3-and-out, went backwards, missed the field goal. Otherwise, it didn't have a 3-and-out all day. And I bet most of them I bet the average drive length, if I calculated it right now, I'm guessing it's like 8 or more.
It has to be. There's 5, 10 or more play drives. I can tell you that stat at least.
Yeah,
5. They just couldn't get off the field. And a lot of it was, letting them out of 2nd and 15s. It wasn't that they were, just getting 4 yards a clip and getting all these 3rd and shorts. There was some of that. But they were giving up explosives in man coverage. I think they maybe underestimated those wide receivers a little bit, but not enough to cost them the game. I don't know. You win a game where you don't play your best, that kind of thing counts a lot. You're not going to show up to 17 of these and play your best game every game. But I felt like, the same thing as like Jacksonville. You play your not best football and then you walk away with a win. You're not going to play your worst football all 17 of them either. So getting those wins feels valuable, especially against a fringe playoff team like the Cardinals. That losing this one hurts their chances quite a bit, but I think they belong in the conversation.
Yeah, Cardinals are way better than the Jaguars. I would also argue the Vikings played better against the Jaguars on both sides of the ball. Remember that was the game where they just turned it over in the red zone every time, but the Vikings defense put on a clinic. The offense probably moved the ball even a little bit better. But my whole point of this was the chat is high on the win. Everybody's high on the win right now. Very 2022-ish though. And that you were in treading water,
very 2022-ish.
You're in molasses. You turn it on in the fourth quarter. You win by 1 at home. You had not been tested by a legitimate opponent since the Rams, and I think I think you can fairly call the Rams legitimate at the time, despite their record. I think with their offense,
they were getting healthy just then. Yeah, and now look at them.
Legitimate test at that time. And the Vikings struggled mightily on defense in those 2 big tests against real offenses. Then they took like 4 weeks off from having real offenses to challenge them. Now, again, today was a real challenge. I just don't know if I'm walking away saying that I'm more encouraged about like the prospects of this team based on this game. I'm aware of the scenarios and how it keeps you alive in the division, and this is all good, and you still have time to kind of get to a point where I feel better about them. I don't know if I'm walking away like wildly encouraged by the performance. You'd love to win. You love to win when you don't play your best and win. But I think that on the better part of this game, you were outplayed on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I think for me there are a couple of like clear decisions that they made that didn't work out, and I don't know if those like copy paste over to other games. And so it can just be what it is. You came out with a plan that didn't quite work, did your best on it, you adjusted late but in the nick of time, and you pulled out a win, and that can just be what it is. Whatever happens in the next game, it's going to be determined by the next game. Like it's, whatever happens in Atlanta, that's going to be up to whatever we get from Kirk Cousins, by the way, 4 picks in a terrible loss, a nice Kirk-tastrophe game that we've seen plenty of those, right? And it's going to be a totally different challenge, but I think I'm with you in that, the Cardinals are not, this is not, eking out the Jaguars. Cardinals are a good team. Even though they have 6 losses, they play good football. Kyler Murray played great football, and to overcome that on not your best day, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a total homer because I'm high off the win, but it feels like there's an encouraging narrative here.
Winning ugly games matters. People are pointing out that's how the Chiefs have done it all year. I'm trying to watch Twitter, see if we get an injury report at all, whether it's Harrison Smith missing a random drive, Jonathan Grenard at the end, maybe he was just gassed. Maybe he had the wind knocked out of him. Did he come back?
I'm pretty sure Harrison Smith rotates out sometimes normally. Because just as a rest thing. I don't know about Gilmore though.
So he has not much this year. He's played a ton of snaps this year, and with them driving the field, I thought it was peculiar that he didn't have a helmet. Maybe it was planned, and maybe Kevin O'Connell will confirm that. I'm sure he's talking now. We'll keep an eye on that because I think the injury thing on defense is a potential factor. If Gilmore has a hamstring, that's not good for the next handful of weeks. Fabian Moreau someone likened him to Duke Shelley. Hey, if he can do a Duke Shelley impression for the final 6 games, I'm into that. Duke Shelley was good at man coverage.
And be ready. And like, they were ready to play man coverage because they really liked that matchup. And then you suffered an injury that makes that matchup significantly worse. But you didn't show up having practiced a whole bunch of these zone coverages all week. So I do think they probably should have just gone to that. And they eventually did, and they made the decision a little late. But like, they did kind of get caught out with, you know, a game plan that just was no longer as nearly as good because of that singular personnel change. Yeah, Dwight McGlothern season, says Bad Dad Joke. That's a good idea.
Caleb Evans cut this week. Maybe not doesn't look like the best move the week that you lose a cornerback, but they obviously didn't like Caleb Evans anymore if they're willing to go that route. Dwight McGlothern, yes. Fabian Moreau was the CB4. We really didn't know who the CB4 was until today because they haven't had this problem. But you lose Pat Jones in this game. Harrison Smith we don't know. Jonathan Bernard at the very end, hopefully nothing. And
Pat Jones did come back too, by the way.
And that's all good. So you're still down pace for at least the next 3 weeks, maybe beyond, and we don't know about Gilmore. If you walk away, you know, without having Gilmore and Pace, or those are your only 2 injuries, I think that's survivable, but something to watch for on this defense. You've had pretty good injury luck this year on that side of the ball.
I got something from friend of the show, Eric Thompson, who was at the game. Caught Zach Pascal mocking the Skull chant right after the Cardinals went up 19-6. Vikings immediately rattle off their first touchdown of the day, and the game totally changes. Got him.
Don't do that. Don't do that, opposing teams. Don't do it. Just when you think you've got it in the bag. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for that mojo. Joey's putting me on the spot. Do I think that the Vikings are better than the Chiefs, Lions, Steelers, Ravens? Not the Lions. Certainly not the Lions. Yes. The Chiefs have so much playoff equity, and they are holding on to concepts for the postseason. They're at that point in their dynasty that they can do that, and they've got the quarterback they have. Ravens defense, I think, puts them more on a level playing field, but they've obviously got a special quarterback. I think the Vikings can beat the Steelers. I think the Vikings.
And are they genuinely better? You know, would they be higher in a power ranking is a lot less relevant than can they actually go take one off of these teams? And I think the Vikings have proven all year that they can go play with good teams. And even the Lions game that they lost, if Sam Darnold throws a slightly better rollout pass, they win that game, right? Like on 3rd and 4 or whatever it was, they iced that game. Yes. So, you know, you're at least going to be toe-to-toe with those games, right? Are they going to be higher than a power rankings? No, but also you shouldn't care nearly about that as much as if you walked into a game with those guys 0-0, are you going, scheduled loss? Absolutely not.
When we return, we've got more on the Vikings comeback over the Arizona Cardinals and a look at what's ahead with 5 games left in the regular season. It's the Locked On Vikings postcast. Well, we put in our Week 13 bets on the last Minnesota football party on FanDuel. Didn't go well for me, but that's okay. Get ready to tackle the NFL action at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers right now can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. If you had the Cardinals covering in this one, you cashed. Vikings were 3.5-point favorites. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need, not only for betting before the game on any line, any league, but live bets at FanDuel, FanDuel.com. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can jump on it. Bet the Vikings had a nice live money line when they were down 13. That would have been a juicy price. Bet 5, get $150 if that $5 bet wins. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And we're brought to you by Game Time. The Game Time app is absolutely the best place to get tickets in your area. With Game Time Picks, you can make getting ticks very easy. See your favorite teams play. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff. That curation makes it simple to get tickets to concerts, comedy, theater, and sports in your area. 2 more Vikings home games coming up the next 2 weeks, Falcons and then the Bears. Get a panoramic view from your seat. See where you're going to be seated. The Game Time lowest price guarantee credits you 110% of the difference if you find better seats, and they've got flexible customer service policies. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Say it with me. Game time.
Game time.
Thank you. Thank you, Luke Braun. Vikings are 10-2. Oh, Caleb Williams. Call timeout.
I know you could be tied.
Hand the Lions a loss on Thanksgiving. Now
it's okay. It's okay. The violent downfall of the Bears is really fun to watch. So we take those.
Yeah, pretty entertaining. That actually more entertaining. I will actually take that.
We take those.
Yeah, that was not a scheduled Lion loss. Now they do have a Packers team coming up, I think next week.
An angry Packers team, I bet.
A Packers team that's playing pretty well right now. And that's another reason why this win is so important, is because you stay a game ahead of the Packers, plus the tiebreaker in hand at the moment. You're a game behind Detroit. Just peek at Detroit's closing schedule, because they have the Packers. Then they've got the one that you need them to lose, the Bills game. After Packers. That, Bears in Soldier. Weird things could happen. 49ers. And at that point, I don't know what the 49ers could still be alive for the division. Could.
Yeah, 49ers in a do or die one, probably.
It's not outrageous that the 49ers could have something to play for in that game. It's in Santa Clara on a Monday night. Brock Purdy certainly will obviously be healthy again, we hope. And then it's Vikings Lions. So really 4 weeks separate that week 18 showdown. So what I just laid out for you: Packers, Bills, Bears, 49ers. That's Detroit's path. Vikings have Falcons, Bears, Seahawks, Packers. Who do you think, or what do you think the records will be? What do you think the status will be after those 4 weeks?
You know, I think I'll put it in practical terms, because you need to go into that week 18 game with tiebreakers, which I think will actually come down to which are wins and which are losses in this final stretch. Quick
note on that. I've been notified too that you can't just both win out, because in a tie situation, the Lions would have the Rams common opponent tiebreaker over you.
Yep. Got it. So you need them. You need to sweep the Packers and then have the Lions lose. You need a divisional loss, one of those to be divisional games to be a loss. That's not just the Vikings game. So you need the Bears or Packers to get them. And I think looking at those games, I could very much see a world where the Vikings go in and could tie it up with the Lions, but not get tiebreakers. And then it kind of turns into a weirdly meaningless one where the Vikings have the 5th or 6th seed sewn up. But looking at the rest of the NFC, Arizona, that the Vikings just beat, is they're the 8th seed right now at 6-6. And then you got Washington at 8-5. They just dusted the Commanders. And then Green Bay and Minnesota 9-3 and 10-2. So the wild card teams themselves are very set. You could still have maybe Washington fall apart, but at 10-2, I mean, the Vikings could lose out, and the Cardinals almost have to win out to overtake them.
Yeah, the Vikings.
So you're almost dormy for a playoff spot in general here. I could very much see the last couple games of this season feeling a little bit meaningless.
Oh, hold on now. Have the Vikings clinched a playoff spot? I'm trying to. No, they haven't.
No,
5 games left.
They could lose out and be 10-7. Arizona could win out and be 11-6. So they haven't clinched, but I think they're getting. You might have scenarios start coming up in the next couple weeks.
Probably this week, because if you
this week you have if they win and get all the right losses, they clinch, or if you get any 2 wins, you clinch. This would be my guess.
Yeah. All right, my brain melted there for a second. I thought the Vikings were in the playoffs.
Trey makes a good point in the chat. 49ers would also be a common opponent. So tiebreakers could get a little squirrely, but what you really need is for the Vikings to win their final Bears and Packers game, the Lions to drop one of those, and then week 18 is for the division and probably the 1 seed.
Man, it's going to be. These are all going to be crazy games down the stretch. I mean, I laid it out for you. But starting with this week, 5 of 6 Vikings opponents were above 500. Now, they just sent the Cardinals to 500. and the Falcons, I think, played themselves down to 500. So
Yep,
that
they're
stat
6-6
is fluid stat. But the Lions are playing a bunch of contenders as well. So all those games are going to matter a ton. Empty the notebook for me, Braun. What did we miss from today's game?
I think the only thing I wanted to mention that I couldn't mention is that the Vikings had a big problem tackling high on James Conner today. And I think part of the reason that those run plays went so well, there was a lot of contact after 1 or 2 yards and then he just pulled them. Everything was tackling high. So I don't know if they were going for the ball, if they just if they just were playing him on that height. But I also remember a play on Kyler Murray where you could have had a face mask on Pat Jones because he was a little high on it. Some of that's angle too. If you don't have the perfect angle, you don't always get to go low at the hips, but there felt like there was not a missed tackles issue, but you were getting 3 or 4 on the tackling process because I think they went a little bit too high. But all of those are the kinds of things you talk about and you iron out over a week. I think for me, the one that sticks with me is that the Vikings got a 2-minute stop when they needed it. That didn't happen in the Lions game. That didn't happen in the Bears game, right? Like they've had that struggle. And I think that's something to really hang your hat on.
Yeah. A first down, I believe short gain for the Cardinals on that final drive, 5 yards or so to the tight end who had a monster day. And then a drop back where you didn't let Murray get out of the pocket. I thought they were legitimately close throughout the day, Braun. I thought Murray is super elusive and they let him get outside too much. They were close. He is so hard to wrap up. They just enveloped him on that second down.
I think they played a lot of really conservative pass rush, and I think they played a little scared of him and on the pass rush, which was not congruous with the very aggressive man coverage strategy they had on the back end. Like if you're going to say, we don't think you can pass the ball, pass rush like this guy can't pass the ball. Get him out of the pocket and really go. But I think you had a lot of interior guys, especially playing contain rather than trying to push. And you had, I mean, they didn't get a sack until that Jonathan Grenard kind of halfway strip thing on that final drive. That was the first time they got a sack on Kyler Murray, and the pressures, it wasn't like they flushed him out and he made a crazy play. It was just, nobody's open. Okay, I guess I'll just scamper for the first. And he could just rush that way. So I don't think they had a very good day up front, to be honest with you. I don't think they're going to like what they see on tape.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll obviously watch the All-22, give it a chat on the Minnesota football party later in the week. Andy points out that the Lions lost to the Cardinals. It was the Bucs. It was another red jersey team.
Oh, there wasn't a first down. No, that was a 4-and-out on that final drive.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the first completion was 5 yards to, I think, McBride. Then a drop.
I see.
Strip sack, short scramble, interception. The second down play was everything. You could have seen them matriculating that ball about 30 yards so easily.
So a minute 20 and 3 timeouts is forever. That's why it's like you needed an honest stop there. That you cannot play clock, and so often they play clock when there's too much time left, and the offense is happy to say, okay.
I was sneaky upset that they didn't run more time near the goal line. I wanted them to run the ball maybe a time or two, but when you're down 6, you just can't play that game. You got to score. They
did take the play clock on the touchdown play down. I think they took it down to like 7 or 8 seconds. So you could have tried to nickel and dime that, but Aaron Jones should not be sliding at the 1 or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, Mason also points out that Justin Jefferson, good get-back day for him after a quiet week last week. 7 catches, 99 yards. A lot of that in the second half when they absolutely needed it. Got open on the Cardinals, letting him open on a 4th down and 7. That's going to be the play that haunts them, I think.
Stick versus zone, you have to play tight to that guy. If he's gonna break that off right at the sticks on 4th down, you got to know where the sticks are and play tight to that guy. That's also JJ, I think, on a linebacker, maybe a nickel corner that was not Sean Murphy Bunting because he was out.
Sorry about the dog freaking out. Last one, Falcons coming in next week, and I think people are throwing around the Michael Penix name already. It was that bad for Kirk today. There's no way that happens. I would be stunned. In fact, there's a 0% chance. But
you think 4 interceptions? That got Dobbs benched. That got Mullins benched.
No, not for the Minnesota game. Not when it's just for the first year of a 4-year deal. No way. No chance. Maybe my certainty is the kiss of death. Just gut reaction to Kirk coming back next week. 10 seconds, 20 seconds on
Well, he's in, Kirk is always so streaky because he's such a month-to-month quarterback, right? And he's in a bad month right now. So we just got to hope we still have him in the bad month and not just the start of now he's going to be good in December or whatever. That'd be great. But otherwise, Falcons are a week-to-week proposition just like the Cardinals were. So it depends on which team you get. And if you get the good one, you're in for a fight.
And they're right in their division hunt. So they've got a lot to
They're
play
leading
for
it because they swept Tampa. So they actually kind of have a really easy plan. And I think a trip to Atlanta on Wild Card weekend, if the Vikings get the 5th seed, feels like the most likely outcome.
Absolutely does. The Minnesota Vikings or Locked On Vikings postcast after every single game. Luke Inman usually hosts. He was at the game today. Hope he had a good time. Luke Braun hosts Locked On Vikings. Great daily Vikings content. Check it out. He'll have more on this game, and we'll have more as a group. Luke Inman, Arif Hassan, Luke Braun, and myself on the Minnesota Football Party tomorrow here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Thank you to the dozens of commenters, the hundreds of viewers, and eventually thousands that will watch on YouTube and listen on the Locked On Vikings audio feed. Thank you so much. We will talk to you after the Falcons game next week on the postcast.